Hey, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. When you're compressing your drum bus, there's a common mistake that people make, and you may not even know you're making it, but it's hurting your drum sound. And that mistake is letting the attack time be too fast. I was sharing this with a friend of mine the other day who was mixing some drums, and he didn't realize that the reason his drums weren't sounding as punchy as he wanted had nothing to do with the individual settings on the individual tracks. It had to do with his compressor setting on his drum bus. So real quickly, I've got this session set up with all my drum tracks here, and these are all routed through this drum bus. Now the only processing you're hearing right now is EQ to carve out a little bit of that boxy mid-range and boost a little bit of low end. So here's the drum sound. So great drum sound to start. But now we want to add some bus compression. Now, bus compression simply just adds some tightness and some punchiness to the overall sound of the drums. This is how I like to mix drums. I start with the bus, get the EQ and compression on there, and then I go back and work on the individual tracks as needed. It's a cool way to work. You should try it. Okay, so here's the default settings. This is the Waves SSL bus compressor. Now, if you don't have this plugin, no big deal. This concept applies no matter what compressor you're using, even if you're using a stock compressor, which I've used plenty of times on a drum bus. Totally still applies. But you'll notice the default settings have the release at 1.2 seconds, which is too long for drums, and the attack at 1 millisecond, which is way too fast for drums. So I'm going to move this release down to 100 milliseconds, which is fine. And let's just take a listen to what the compression sounds like at 1 millisecond. Okay, so we've got about 3-4 dB of gain reduction happening. There is some compression happening, and it is a fairly cool sound, but if you listen more carefully, you'll notice it kind of sounds like there's a blanket over the drums. Let's listen to it without compression, then I'll turn the compressor back on. So there's more resonance on the kick and the snare, and that's kind of cool, but the attack of the actual drums themselves has been kind of muffled. We've got a blanket over the drum kit now. That's no bueno. So let's take a listen to something different. What if we raise the attack as high as it'll go? 30 milliseconds on this compressor. And if we just lower the threshold a little bit, because a slower attack is going to compress less. So I'm going to lower the threshold to get the same amount of compression, but listen to how much more punchy these drums sound. Suddenly that snare is just snapping through. We're getting the benefits of that resonance that you get with bus compression, but we're not losing that snappiness of the snare. Super cool. So I'm going to dial it back to 1 millisecond, and then I'm going to just turn it slowly back up to 30 milliseconds and listen to the difference in the drum. Specifically, listen to the snare. Man, it just comes through and punches you in the face. Now, I know it's not a fair comparison because there was more compression happening at the lower attack time, but you get the idea. There's more transient, there's more punch, there's just more awesome in the drum sound. So if you're making this mistake and using a fast attack time on your drum bus, try lengthening it out. See what happens. Your drum sound will thank you for it.